The climate crisis is reshaping the world around us and making life much harder for many. But still, people and communities often need to be persuaded that it is in their interest to take measures to make the planet sustainable. Hello and welcome to a new edition of Eco Africa. I am Sandra Kahomza Twinovideo, all the way from Kampala, right here in Uganda.
Hi Sandra, it's true environmental protection often meets with resistance, even now, but changing behavior starts with understanding the problem. We hope we can explain some of the issues and show that if there is a problem, there is also a solution. I am Chris Alems, joining you from Lagos. Here's what we've got coming up. We find out what happened when a community occupying a forest in Kenya voluntarily vacated it. How wisdom that is many centuries old is combating water scarcity in Spain. And meet an entrepreneur in Mozambique who's found a new use of sugarcane waste.
In our reports, we often explore the effect of climate change on the environment, but indirectly, it also affects human relationships. That is because now, more than ever, people have to compete for land and resources. In many countries in West Africa, conflicts between farmers and nomadic herdsmen have always existed, but these days they are getting worse. We go to Ghana to see how these clashes can be resolved.
Farmer-herder disputes can quickly escalate into violence, and these men nearly came to blows recently after one said the other's cattle had eaten his cashew trees.
Because there are no grazing areas, the cattle move into our farms. They destroy our crops, which then affects our livelihoods.
Abro Bobby Tandawura has a farm in Busunu, in Ghana's Savannah region. Every day he checks whether cattle belonging to nomadic herdsmen have damaged his trees. Al-Hassan Amadou is a Fulani herder with more than 100 cattle. He says he can't understand what all the fuss is about, just because his animals wandered through the farmer's fields.
There's no open land available for the cattle to graze. No matter where we go with our animals, we pass by people's farms. Then sometimes the cattle stray into the farms.
The farmer demanded compensation, but with Amadou unwilling to pay, outside mediation was needed to prevent it escalating.
Sometimes you or your cattle can be harmed. Some herders and cattle have even been killed for this kind of thing.
This was once a Fulani camp in Tili in the far north of Ghana. Witnesses say soldiers came and burned the place down. This footage was filmed secretly. It allegedly shows soldiers taking Fulani people away to refugee camps without their cattle. The herders came here for lush grass, but not all are nomadic. Ghana is home to some hundreds of thousands of Fulani, or Fulbe, as they call themselves. Yet they do not enjoy full citizens' rights, and many Ghanaians view them as thieves or extremists, which experts say is unfounded.
What we are having in Ghana is a situation that has built up to a point where the Fulani or the Fulbe as a tribe is generally discriminated against. So typical of racism or ethnocentrism, anything about the other is bad.
Fulani communities usually set up camp on the edge of towns and villages. Incidents of discrimination or violent attacks are reportedly on the rise. Experts fear human-induced climate change will cause the conflict to spread to more regions.
When the climate hadn't changed, we saw very little of this. But over the past 1 or 2 decades, we have seen an increase in these conflicts because climate change is pushing people to move from the north towards the south in search of water and food for their animals.
Here on the edge of the Sahel, unpredictable rainfall and increasing drought combined with population growth means there's more competition for fertile ground. So the Fulani and their herds are moving into new areas, impacting not only fields but also valuable ecosystems. Past governments in Ghana have failed to set aside grazing areas for the cattle. The Fulani herders also face criticism.
They should mind the numbers of the animals. If there is indiscriminate multiplication in any landscape, we are designating some portion solely for the animals. But we're also saying that, look, every animal keeper should not go beyond these numbers.
In response to the growing conflict in northern Ghana, the Catholic Church set up a center for conflict transformation and peace studies. It's here that herdsman Al-Hassan Amadou and farmer Abro Bobby Tandawura took their grievances for mediation. The farmer is still demanding compensation for alleged crop damage. The organization, also known as SECOTAPS, has mediators trained to diffuse such conflicts.
Before introducing this mediation team, issues about herder and farmer was escalating to a very higher level. They go to police station, they go to the palace, and a whole lot of things. But the introduction of this mediation has made farmer and herder collaboration very good.
In this case, the mediators ruled that Amadou doesn't have to pay compensation, but will if it happens again. The farmer accepts the ruling. He wasn't able to prove any serious damage to his trees. SECOTAP says it has helped peacefully resolve more than 600 cases since 2020, with land and resources in ever shorter supply. Fostering a dialogue between farmers and the herders is clearly a vital first step towards peaceful coexistence in the wider region.
Forests have so many benefits for the environment, including climate regulation, providing water, timber, energy, biodiversity, and so much more. But they are disappearing at an alarming rate. Over the last 10 years, Kenya's forest cover has dropped from 10% to just 6% of the country's surface area.
But there is some good news. Over the past years, more than 5,000 people who had illegally encroached on and settled in some part of Kenya's Kirisha forest have chosen to move out. This has paved the way for natural forest regeneration.
Strong hands, fertile soil, and water. From this simple starter kit, many trees will grow. Here at the edge of the Kirisha forest in central Kenya, Samburu women grow seedlings by the hundreds in a community-owned nursery. Once the seedlings mature, they're put into the ground. The women receive funding from the government and various NGOs. 80,000 seedlings have been planted so far.
The tree nurseries have been a real benefit to us. We can earn money, so we can pay school fees for our children, or we can start up businesses.
But that's a recent development. Until 2020, few Samburu gave much thought to reforestation. To make charcoal, many chopped down trees in the Kirisha forest. Covering 92,000 hectares, this forest reserve feeds many large rivers and is an important source of water in otherwise arid Samburu County. Over the decades, thousands of people settled in or near the forest and let their cattle graze there. This unregulated use of the forest and its resources eventually destroyed 1/3 of its total area. The Samburu then realized that the overexploitation of the forest's natural resources was putting their future at risk.
We were having to trek 5 kilometers to fetch water.
The forest was clearly dying, provoking regular conflicts with other tribes over water and land. So in late 2019, the Samburu decided to leave the forest. Kenya's national broadcaster, KBC, picked up on the story.
Some of the families have already left the forest, with others demolishing their houses as they prepare to leave the forest. Those affected say they were not forced out of the forest, but are vacating voluntarily.
What could have been a source of conflict between the government and the local community was resolved peacefully.
I think moving away just without force from the government out of forest, it is something unique in the whole world. So I think nobody forced us, and we just saw our problem. We saw that our animals are dying and without pasture. We are also losing life when we go to look pastures from our neighbors. So we've seen our problems, and we say the best way to solve this problem is to move out of the forest, and we take care of our forest so that our forest can take care of us back.
Once the decision had been made, the Samburu were offered support from various groups, including the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, which served as an intermediary.
We identified together the capacity needs of the key stakeholders to identify, for instance, what were the needs in managing the forest and ensuring that the forest is controlled, and also ensuring access and really sustainable use of the forest resources.
Such as making honey. After being trained in sustainable beekeeping by local and international NGOs, honey production has really taken off. The community earns nearly 30,000 euros a year from the harvest.
Mostly we get up to 1 ton, maybe in 2 months, or at least these are some of the benefits they are getting. Because before, they don't have these things. They only graze and that's it.
On the outskirts of the Kourizia forest, the Samburu are building a future for themselves that doesn't come at the expense of the environment. Slowly but surely, the flora and fauna are starting to flourish again.
Meanwhile, in Europe, climate change is making summers hotter and drier, including in southern Spain. Farmers here are having to apply all their know-how to keep their fields irrigated.
And you might be surprised to hear that they are not turning to new techniques. A lot of their know-how dates all the way back to the ancient Moors. They invaded Spain over 1,300 years ago, and some of their farming methods still work well to this day.
Paco Perez is 95 years old, but he still lends a hand when he's needed. Hardly anyone in his village knows the old irrigation system as well as he does.
Seeing the water in the canals was always the greatest thing for me. We tended our fields with it. We lived from those canals.
In the 8th century, the Moors built a complex network of canals in the mountains of the Alpujarra region in southern Spain. Even today, the irrigation ditches are still used. Paco and his son Antonio use the system to water their pepper crop, so they're benefiting from the Moorish legacy.
The system they left us is something very important. Even though the Romans built irrigation canals, the Arabs perfected them.
But many of the ditches haven't been used for years. That's why they're restoring them in cooperation with archaeologist José María Martín Civantos. He says the benefits go far beyond farming.
Old canals like this one here are very important to the environment. They create life. Some of the water seeps in and appears further down below. That way, the system contributes to greater biodiversity.
The network of canals prevents the water from draining too quickly, water that's becoming increasingly scarce. Paco says there's no denying climate change anymore.
It hasn't snowed in my village for 18 years. Before, we always had to sweep the snow off of the flat roofs and onto the street. Sometimes we'd have snow for 15 days, 20 days, a month. Those days are over.
Reservoirs show the notorious water scarcity. And yet Spain is farming more and more tropical fruits like mangoes and avocados, which need lots of water. As a result, farmers rely increasingly on automated systems that deliver water to individual plants drop by drop. Agricultural engineer Eduardo Maldonado says the old canals are obsolete because water seeps out and evaporates as it's transported.
Drip irrigation is the future. It's much more efficient and can be implemented on all types of farms. It allows us to save between 40 and 60% of water.
Paco and Antonio aren't impressed. They continue to water their fields with what comes from the Moorish irrigation canals. But they recognize that it's not profitable for big farming operations.
These days, one person has to do many jobs all at once. That's the real reason why they're switching to automated drip irrigation. It's not because it's better.
Archaeologists view the Moorish irrigation ditches as being more contemporary than ever. That's why they're trying to learn from the seniors in the villages of Alpujarra.
This knowledge is being forgotten. If we look at efficiency from several points of view and also environmental benefit, then the systems are much more effective, especially against the backdrop of climate change today.
But there are fewer and fewer traditional farmers using the old canals. That makes it more difficult to keep the Moorish legacy alive.
From strategies to combat drought in southern Europe to fighting plastic pollution in southeastern Africa, we head now to Mozambique to meet a young entrepreneur. She started a business that makes the most of waste as a resource and reduces it in more ways than one.
3 million tons of sugarcane are harvested in the plantations of Mozambique every year and processed mainly into sugar. This produces large quantities of waste, which could be used to avoid other waste. That thought occurred to Karina Coco Jamal. Her company Coco Boxes in the capital Maputo manufactures paper bags from sugarcane waste.
We produce different types of paper bags. We make them in different sizes, from small to large.
The pulpy, fibrous sugarcane waste is turned into paper. The end product? Bags made from sugarcane waste, or bagasse as it's known. The company started 3 years ago. It now makes 5,000 bags a week, a low-resource replacement for plastic bags.
Our products are non-toxic. Unlike polyurethane, they don't contain toxins.
Plastic waste is a major problem in Mozambique, as it is in all countries with poor waste management. A lot of plastic trash washes into the ocean and harms marine life. This is another reason why customers welcome alternatives, such as the cocoa bags.
Plastics take an average 400 years to decompose in nature. So the main thing is that this is an environmentally friendly alternative.
Coco wants to expand production of her sugarcane bags. Think big is her motto. Because for her, the bags are more than just a source of income.
If I were to win any award, it should be for my mission, not because I'm such a great entrepreneur, but because of our mission and the goals we've set.
Wetlands are some of the most precious and most threatened ecosystems on our planet. They need to be properly looked after, not just because they are habitat for so many species, but also because they provide vital services for humans. We'll visit an archipelago in northern Guinea to see how conservation efforts are helping nature survive and protecting the interests of the local communities at the same time.
Good luck. Off you go. Run fast.
This young turtle has made it. as have many of its siblings here on the Tristão Islands. Local eco-guards have kept the eggs safe from poachers and are now shielding the baby turtles from birds as they flipper their way across the beach. Protecting the nesting areas is a community effort.
We have our eco-guards who keep watch morning and evening. They're from the village themselves. Just by their very presence, by educating their families, they're our weapons. Nobody touches anything.
The local eco-guards have been working with an armed conservation corps linked to Guinea's Environment Ministry since 2013. That's when the Tristão Islands were granted the status of Marine Protected Area. The arrangement was the culmination of a 7-year process that combined the islanders' knowledge and experience with input from scientific and governmental bodies. One of the chief organisers explained the approach.
We set up a consultation framework where people were free to express themselves, often in their own Alu or Susu language, to express what they wanted. We then transformed the result of this consultation framework into a management plan. This is how the management committee, for example, came into being, with its local branches.
The Tristão Islands are a mixture of mangroves, mudflats, forests and sandbanks, facing the Atlantic Ocean. These largely undisturbed ecosystems are a jewel of biodiversity, but rising sea levels are putting pressure on the local communities. In 2023, seawater flooded 1/5 of the rice fields there. Some 20 families formed a management committee to work together and build dikes to protect their fields. The initiative is part of an intelligent conservation approach that aims to reduce human impact in biodiversity hotspots. Traditionally, rice farmers such as Abdoulaye Kachek would move to more fertile land every few years, and that meant cutting down mangrove forests. Once they became aware of the damage that caused, they decided to stay put.
There was a mangrove restoration project. We realized it made no sense to plant mangroves in one place and just cut them down somewhere else. So we keep the fertile fields we have and don't go clearing elsewhere.
The mangrove trees on Tristão are vital for biodiversity and reducing coastal erosion. The local eco-guards and the Conservation Corps carry out regular patrols. On this tour, the Conservation Corps officer spots that trees have been felled.
Hey, come here. Why has this wood been cut?
Locals may fell some trees for their own use, but only if the request is approved at a higher level. The local eco-guard explains to the officer why this cutting was agreed on.
The wood was cut to make a road to the last village. We had nothing to make the road, and there's a river in the middle. So we cut the wood to make planks for the bridge. We didn't want to cut it, but a meeting of the people approved the decision because we had no other means.
Other rules are harder to enforce. The nature reserve extends into the ocean, and the joint patrols carry out unannounced checks on returning fishermen in case they've caught any protected species. Under the watchful gaze of the eco-guards, the crew unloads its catch. These rays are critically endangered. A tense discussion follows as the fishermen explain themselves and the Conservation Corps officer lays out the law.
If the fish are not dead, we tell them to release them back into the sea. If they are already dead, we ask them why they caught them and explain why they shouldn't go out and catch them another day on purpose.
This time, the fishermen get away with a warning. Eventually, this community-based conservation effort aims to win over everyone on the Tristão Islands.
A story that goes to show that how much can be achieved when people understand why protecting the environment is important. We've come to the very end of this week's show. We hope it has given you something to think about. I am Sandra Kahomza Twinobdio, signing off from Kampala, right here in Uganda.
See you soon, Sandra. And to our viewers, don't forget to check us out on social media. And remember, you can always get in touch with your thoughts and ideas on making our world a safer and greener place. For now, it's goodbye from me, Chris Alems, in Nigeria. See you next time.